There's one final addition to the if statement that we still need to look at, and that is what's known as the elif clause. Elif can be thought of as a bastardization of the words else and if. So what do we need them for? Well, sometimes we need to write a piece of conditional code in which there are more than two mutually exclusive options. So far we've only seen a maximum of two blocks of code that we can run depending on the value of a certain command. Well, we may want to write a piece of code in which there are 3 choices or 4 choices or 25 choices. Let's have a look at what that might look like. It looks like this. We say if command 1, then we do a particular set of commands from command 1. Next, instead of the word else or instead of the word phi, we put elif, which means else if. So in other words, it will only run if the first command produced a error or a false condition. And at that point we'll run command 2, which will itself produce a true or false value. And if that's true, then we run command set 2, otherwise we run command set 3. Notice that there is the word then immediately after the elif statement, just like there's the word then under the if statement. So that gives us 3 possible conditional code blocks. Here's an example of that. Now, in this particular block of code, I want to create a file that contains a list of all the users that are currently logged into the system. But I don't want to do that if the file already exists. So the very first thing I do is I check whether the file already exists, and if it does, then I put out an error message saying, sorry, the file exists. Now, if that fails, in other words, if the ls produced some kind of error message, then we are okay to create the file. So then I run the who command and I send the output to the file in question. Notice that I'm using a variable name, $file, to represent the name of the file that I'm trying to manipulate. Obviously the variable called file must have been set somewhere before we get to this code. Now if the who command with its output being redirected to the file fails, there's only one possible way that could fail, and that is if we did not have permission to create the file, or perhaps the file was a invalid name. But if it succeeds, if we get back an exit status of 0, then we say, okay, file contains the user list. Now if it fails, then we can say that we could not create it. So command 1 in this case is the ls of $file, and the command 2 in this case is the who greater than $file, giving us, of course, 3 separate code blocks. We're not restricted to just 3, of course. We can have as many elif clauses as we like, on and on down the page, giving us as many code blocks as we want, but of course there can only be one else clause. Now I've just noticed a little error in the code that I'm showing you on the screen at the moment. Can you spot it? If you can't, maybe just pause the video at this point and see if you can find it. Well, yes it is. I need the word then underneath the line that begins with elif. So if we wanted several elif clauses, then we would have an elif then code block, elif then code block, elif then code block, and finally else code block, and then the phi. So it only took us 3 modules, but we finally got all the way through the if statement.